Grave. NASA has recently announced a substantial alteration to its lunar exploration agenda. No Lunar Starship Landing. And this has raised concerns for the future of SpaceX's ambitious endeavors. Is SpaceX in trouble? Stay tuned as we dive into this problem and more in today's episode of Alpha Tech. The South Pole of the Moon is a stunning place. Towering mountains are bathed in perpetual sunshine, and the lunar dust, fine as powder, gleams in unfiltered light. Plunging craters exist in permanent shadows and hide pockets of ice in their gray rock, the water frozen and undisturbed for as long as 3 billion years. Here, somewhere along this silent terrain, NASA wants to land a new crew of astronauts. Like those who came before, these visitors will suit up and go for a walk, their bodies bouncing in the low gravity. But that lunar stroll isn't happening anytime soon, and could be delayed even longer. Speaking at an August 8th briefing at the Kennedy Space Center, Jim Free, NASA's Associate Minister for Exploration Systems Development, said the Artemis 3 mission still has a formal launch date of December 2025, but that he was monitoring potential delays in hardware needed for said mission. Mr. Free didn't discuss the specific triggers that could initiate changes to Artemis 3. Back in June, they'd also expressed concerns about the somewhat delayed debut of Starship, and worries about the operational aspects of the lunar lander, the tankers to be employed for in-orbit fueling, the successful lunar landing of Starship, and the transfer of cryogenic propellant to orbit. However, they also have contingency plans for every possible scenario. If there are delays with Starship, they'll have equivalent missions prepared as potential replacements. Particularly, the essence of Artemis 3 could be influenced by the outcomes and progress of Artemis 2. Indeed, SpaceX's version of Starship under the contract with NASA is responsible for lunar orbit and transferring astronauts from the Orion spacecraft to the lunar surface and back. To carry out this process, NASA has to ensure the success of their expensive SLS rocket and the proper functioning of the Orion capsule. However, at the moment, the progress of the Artemis 2 mission is also not very promising. The Orion capsule hasn't been fully finalized yet, and investigations into its heat shield could possibly delay the lunar journey. Furthermore, the assembly of SLS has also been delayed due to unspecified issues with its downcomers. This tells us that the project doesn't appear to be ready for NASA's Artemis 2 launch schedule. If even Artemis 2 isn't on that correct timeline, then whether the Orion spacecraft and the SLS rocket will be ready in time for Artemis 3 remains uncertain. As for SpaceX, they also have a lot to do before they can meet the requirements of the Artemis 3 mission. They need to launch, Free said. They need to launch multiple times, not just for us, but for them. And they need to launch multiple times for us, so we really want them to find the success in their launches, including the next one. Next comes the execution of a ship-to-ship transfer from what's essentially a fuel depot spacecraft to Starship, and then performing a successful uncrewed landing on the Moon with Starship before NASA lets humans on board. NASA is also concerned that the launch of Starship could impact the development of Axiom's spacesuit. This is because only upon Starship's completion can they proceed to design suitable spacesuits for the astronauts. Any potential delays in either the spacesuits or the Starship could possibly lead to a reordering of missions. There's a lot to do, but with a leading aerospace company like SpaceX, this is certainly going to get handled. The first orbital launch of Starship didn't seem too good, but it actually served as a significant stepping stone for the development of SpaceX. They showed NASA the future projects involving the most challenging technologies that Starship will execute beyond space during the reception of NASA groups at the recent Starbase. Furthermore, SpaceX has even provided an updated schedule to NASA, which they were asking for details about. However, Free still noted, "I think we'll look at that and update it as soon as we have some time to digest it." This shows us that NASA's skepticism still lingers towards SpaceX's Starship. But whether that's the truth or just a pretext to mask their delays, as various mission components interconnect, NASA's issues could also contribute to slowing the return to Moon progress. Issues stemming from funding for SLS, the instability of both SLS and the Orion capsule, will likely form a significant part of their potential delays. In fact, from what SpaceX has done and is doing, we can clearly see the effort and determination they're putting forth to achieve their goals. The issues with Starship mentioned above are not significant problems for SpaceX. Besides achieving progressive milestones in preparation for the upcoming second Starship launch, which included successfully developing a massive water deluge system, creating a more robust launch pad, and making modifications to the rocket to address challenges from the initial launch. The latest discovery includes an image of the nose cone 22 labeled HLS with a human-sized door on the left side. We observed the emergence of a life support system, typically an indispensable component in human-carrying spacecraft. Special thanks to Starship Gazer and Lab Padre for providing these new images. While SpaceX hasn't officially confirmed this info, we can still observe the remarkable parallel development potential of SpaceX. It won't be long until that second launch. If Starship can perform its launch this year, the likelihood of a successful HLS mission by 2024 is very high, perhaps even by mid-year instead of the end of the year as NASA suggested. Both the Biden administration and Congress also need to support and endorse this project, which could further enhance the development process of the Starship. The Starship has the potential to unveil a future so promising that it was once considered unimaginable science fiction not too long ago. It would be very regrettable if we continue to allow delays to hinder that promising future. The role of the moon-bound Starship becomes even more crucial as it serves as the determining factor in the success or failure of the race to the moon between the US and China. While not everyone agrees that such a race is happening, the use of this terminology by US politicians, including current NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, and its ubiquity in global media coverage suggests that many will view efforts to land humans on the moon this way. If China lands humans on the moon before the US, they could potentially assert immediately, "This is ours, stay out," much like they did with the South China Sea. At that point, people around the world might perceive this as proof of China's position as a global leader and the capabilities of their communist government. China's ambitions are indeed substantial. While the United States is actively rallying nations to join the Artemis Accords, an agreement that promotes peaceful and collaborative international space exploration, China stands as an exception among the 28 nations that have endorsed these accords. This underscores China's independent stance, indicating its aim to dominate the moon for their own interests. Furthermore, the moon holds as a valuable resource in the form of trapped water ice, particularly in the Lunar South Pole. This is why the competition for lunar exploration is fiercer than ever before. Unlike the well-lit landing sites of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, photographs of the South Pole reveal numerous deep craters perpetually cast in shadows. Due to the angle of the sun, most of these volcanic craters remain shrouded in darkness for extended periods. Inside these shadowed craters lie layers of hidden ice, holding significant promise as a crucial resource for both rocket fuel production and essential drinking water. Nelson also emphatically underscores the importance of the international community's interest in this pursuit. If indeed we find water in abundance that could be utilized for future crews and spacecraft, we want to make sure that it's available to all, not just the ones claiming it. In the first orbital flight, Starship concluded with a spectacular explosion. That's why NASA has expressed concerns about the potential timeline delays for the completion of their Artemis 3 lunar mission. However, SpaceX has poured a bucket of cold water on top of NASA. The company has just revealed a section of the nose cone on the upcoming Starship HLS prototype that's about to undergo testing. On August 13th, SpaceX relocated a mysterious nose cone from mid-bay. At a glance, we can observe a door taller than the height of the average adult. It seems this door is covered with a type of black nylon fabric and lacks a solid structure. This suggests that SpaceX will frequently utilize it, and surely it holds more intriguing aspects beyond its exterior. Few would guess what implications that door might have with the nose cone. So, let's see this image. Here's a label on the vehicle, enlarged, clearly stating HLS or Human Landing System. Observing the nose cone more closely reveals another interesting aspect. Shifting your gaze downward from the nose cone, you can see numerous pipes and wires connected to a large rectangular electronic panel believed to be the life support system. Wow! This nose cone is indeed part of the Starship HLS mock-up, something that'll take humans back to the moon for the first time in over 50 years. In reality, This HLS nose cone's been produced long before, initially intended for Ship 21, but ultimately becoming part of Ship 22. Therefore, it still has a thermal shield and cap support. When Ship 22 was dismantled due to obsolete issues, its nose cone was brought to mid-bay. At mid-bay, nose cone 22 underwent internal gutting and was redesigned with an evenly hexagonal floor. Unlike the enclosed floors of other remaining nose cones, the floor panel of nose cone 22 has an open central hole and is cut entirely around the outer ring adhering to the cone's edge. Moreover, the nose cone integrates an electronic arch and is stacked onto a single ring, shortening its length compared to other nose cones. This also implies it lacks a payload bay. All these new clues have confirmed that the nose cone of Ship 22 is being used as a model for HLS, particularly to test the life support system within the crew compartment. For a Starship HLS, ensuring everything operates well and safely is a prerequisite, especially since it will be the means to transport humans to the moon. Starship HLS undoubtedly can't afford to be without a life support system to protect humans from the harsh environments of space. While Starship's continuously being enhanced and comprehensively developed, perhaps the crucial focus for the lunar variant of Starship in the coming period is the successful completion of life support system testing within the nose cone. Despite SpaceX's extensive experience with life support systems through their Crew Dragon spacecraft, providing life support for a short journey into a different orbit is significantly different from supplying life support for humans over the course of several weeks and months in the depths of space. If we consider a basic life support system, it encompasses all the essentials required for human existence on Earth. Anything that aids a crew's survival and functioning while ensuring the environment's safety constitutes a genuine life support system. The most fundamental necessity is breathable air. Life support systems must provide a suitable gas mixture for individuals to breathe and effectively remove carbon dioxide from the air before it reaches hazardous levels. Maintaining the right temperature and atmospheric pressure is crucial. Astronauts will require access to drinking water and proper wastewater disposal facilities. However, when dealing with prolonged periods in space where individuals reside for months, a regenerative system becomes imperative. This involves recycling crucial elements like oxygen and water within a closed-looped framework. Even urine and sweat are reclaimed and transformed back into potable water. Furthermore, life support systems tend to be intricate and weighty, potentially leading to operational modifications for the vehicle. Ensuring safety during emergencies is also a pivotal consideration. Converting a cargo spacecraft into a crewed vessel entails a multitude of tasks. But there's no need to worry. The emergence of a mock-up for simulating HLS suggests that SpaceX has already identified the necessary steps. Elon's also remarked, "I don't think it's actually super hard to do that relative to the spacecraft itself," adding, "The life support system's pretty straightforward." In the upcoming period, more information about Starship HLS is likely to be unveiled. Thus, they may achieve their ambitious timeline for Starship HLS. If approval for the second launch comes soon, the HLS could execute an unmanned demonstration per the contract with NASA in the coming year. Getting to the moon's a challenge, but long-term existence on the lunar surface is the bigger concern that scientists are worrying about for Starship HLS and the astronauts. The longer people live away from Earth, the more exposure they have to deep space radiation and galactic cosmic rays. These are highly energetic particles that emanate from the sun or distant sources outside our galaxy. They can pierce through skin and other materials, causing damage to biological tissues. The Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field help shield us from the majority of this radiation. But out in deep space and on the moon, that protection goes away. The Apollo astronauts only had small increases in exposure since they were on the moon for such short periods. Living on the moon will entail a completely different level of exposure, and if the sun has a major solar flare, it could send a large dose of radiation toward the moon. NASA and researchers suspect that heightened exposure to radiation could lead to damage to the central nervous system and affect brain function, according to Dorit Donaville, director of Translational Research Institute for Space Health, which is partnered with NASA. In reality, some kind of radiation shielding will be needed, and Starship's stainless steel exterior may not be enough to protect astronauts for a long time on the surface. Experts have proposed lining long-term lunar habitats with water or ice to slow down these particles, but there are some elements within cosmic rays, known as heavy ions, that might be able to pierce even through that. Perhaps the best option is creating habitats that are covered in lunar dirt, which will require lots of excavation and construction equipment. Mining equipment also becomes critical if this lunar base needs to be self-sustainable. Resupply missions to the moon will be much more difficult than those sent to the International Space Station in Earth's orbit, as the moon is days away in transit time. Astronauts at a moon base will need to rely on the resources around them, such as dirt for construction and potentially water and ice to use for drinking and turn into fuel. All the equipment to mine this could be brought to the moon by Starship, but it's unclear what they'd look like since no one's actually operated such equipment on the moon before. Here on Earth, to set up a mine, it can take up to 20 years, and that's on the Earth, says Phil Metzger, a planetary physicist at the University of Central Florida. So when you talk about setting up a mine on the moon, it's harder, especially because we have less understanding of the resources and we have zero experience in doing mining operations in that environment. The issue of gravity on the moon is also one of the challenges for exploration activities. Our bones and muscles are accustomed to Earth's gravity, but these tissues might deteriorate more quickly on the moon, which has 1/6 of the gravity of our planet. Exercise could mitigate that, but researchers ultimately don't know if that'd be enough or what kind of equipment's needed. There's also just the basic comfort of people to think about. Design decisions like lighting and the angle of chairs during the launch can have impacts on how people feel and behave. Musk has talked about sending 100 people up on Starship, with each person getting about 10 cubic meters of space. Especially in like a zero-G situation, that's actually quite a lot of room, claims Musk. But that may turn out not to be enough in the grand scheme of things, negatively affecting people's mental states. The behavioral aspects are a major concern, and you can't always predict how people are going to react to things being so far away from Earth without direct communication, says Donovan. These issues are truly just the tip of the iceberg. There are still many challenges to overcome for lunar exploration. Of course, SpaceX will address the objective problems on the moon after successfully placing Starship into orbit. The emergence of the HLS nose cone marks a new milestone in the remarkable progress of Starship. Humans will soon return to the moon, and even Mars. Surely, the challenges will have solutions, and all we need is time. SpaceX is approaching the final preparations for the second orbital test flight conducted by Starship. If this test flight's successful, SpaceX will be one step closer to its mission of lunar exploration. Prior to this significant event, SpaceX has also unexpectedly unveiled a new design for the human landing system Starship, unlike any other. So, what are these new changes? Why SpaceX built it differently? For those who may not be aware, the appearance of the nose cone, believed to be a mock-up of the Starship HLS moonlander, has moved to the test site in early August. This marks a step in testing life support systems for the Starship HLS variant. Since then, the activities inside the nose cone haven't been publicly disclosed, but we can speculate that they are somewhat preparing for upcoming tests next week. Why do I say that? It's because one of the latest activities we can observe on the exterior of SpaceX's cone nose. Images show SpaceX workers carefully applying a coat of white paint to the nose cone. What is the purpose of this paint layer? There are indeed many questions surrounding this. Some speculate that SpaceX is applying the paint to make it look more like an HLS variant rather than a standard Starship. However, others counter this argument by raising doubts about the accuracy of this nose cone. If it is indeed an HLS variant, why hasn't SpaceX removed the heat shield tiles or painted the entire nose cone white? To address these concerns, it's essential to remember that this is just a mock-up of the HLS crew cabin, and it doesn't need to replicate the HLS's external appearance precisely. SpaceX's main goal here is to assess the systems and interior design of the crew cabin. This is evident from earlier images when the HLS nose cone was moved, revealing numerous electrical boxes, a control panel, and various switches and indicator lights. So, SpaceX isn't necessarily required to remove the heat shield tiles from the nose cone's surface. Such a task would be time-consuming and labor-intensive. Next, the application of white paint might give the nose cone an appearance of resembling the front section of the Starship HLS. However, the primary purpose of this paint job is not to achieve that similarity. Most rockets and spacecraft are typically painted in either white or darker colors. White's favored because it helps maintain a cooler temperature for the vehicle before a launch, which is particularly advantageous when exposed to scorching sunlight. Additionally, maintaining the rocket's body temperature reduces fuel evaporation and enhances overall safety. Anything that can help keep the rocket cooler without increasing its weight becomes a cost-saving measure. These are the effects of painting a rocket white. As for the nose cone, which is placed outside the environment, the ability to absorb heat from sunlight could affect the interior tests. Therefore, painting a significant portion of it white may be intended to reflect sunlight, making the nose cone cooler. While we've made a significant discovery about the HLS nose cone, SpaceX has announced a road closure scheduled for September 7th. What's even more intriguing is that the appearance of SPMT vehicles beneath Ship 26 on the night of September 8th, suggesting that Ship 26 may be destined for the orbital launch mount for testing. As we know, S-26 is one of the variants that look different from other Starship iterations. Firstly, it lacks a heat shield. Since the orbital Starship testing phase in 2020 to 21, all completed ships have been fitted with approximately 10,000 black ceramic heat tiles. Eventually, these tiles will shield the spacecraft from the intense heat generated during re-entry into Earth's atmosphere at orbital speeds. Ship 26 also has no flaps. Since SpaceX first fully assembled a Starship in October 2020, every ship the company's completed has 4 large flaps and form-fitting aero covers installed. Starships need flaps to steer and orient themselves during orbital re-entries. They also need flaps to control themselves during exotic landing maneuvers, which require a ship to freefall belly down and aggressively flip into a vertical orientation for propulsive landings. Finally, and perhaps most intriguingly, Ship 26 lacks any form of payload bay, which is why it appears more streamlined and compact compared to any of the original Starship designs. The end result is a smooth, featureless Starship that looks like a steel bullet, can't return to Earth, and can't deploy satellites. However, SpaceX clearly intended to build Ship 26 and is now preparing to qualify it for flight. In truth, Ship 26 possesses the necessary characteristics of a lunar variant. Hence, the relocation of Ship 26 to SpaceX's test site is a clear indication of their plans for the work on the Starship HLS. They might conduct engine tests, assess component stability, perform hardware modifications, or perhaps simply apply a coat of white paint to Ship 26. All these new signs indicate that work on the Starship HLS variant has progressed to certain stages. And this progress may become even more apparent when the Starship spacecraft takes off successfully. If that launch does proceed smoothly, Starship HLS could potentially make its debut in early next year and might even be ready for the Artemis mission by the end of the same year. However, SpaceX still relies on the FAA's approval. Since its first launch in the spring, SpaceX has been busy making updates to both its Starship rocket as well as the infrastructure around the launch pad. They added a water deluge system at the base of the orbital launch mount to protect the pad from the damage seen during the first launch attempt. Teams also added a hot staging ring to the top of the Super Heavy booster to alter the way that the first and second stages of the rocket separate during its ascension. According to previous sources, SpaceX submitted its final mishap investigation report to the FAA over the summer, following its unsuccessful launch attempt on April 20th. Part of the SpaceX-led mishap investigation that's being overseen by the FAA. An agency spokesperson told in a statement on July 28 that its oversight is to ensure SpaceX complies with its FAA-approved mishap investigation plan and other regulatory requirements. A mishap investigation is designed to further enhance public safety. It'll determine the root cause of the event and identify corrective actions the operator must implement to avoid a recurrence of the event, the spokesperson said. Because of their interests as well, both NASA and the National Transportation Safety Board also have an official observer status to the investigation. As of now, we still don't have a clear announcement regarding FAA updates and additional requirements for SpaceX before the agency grants another launch license for Starship. Therefore, the expected timeline of Starship's launch soon is no longer certain. There's also the outstanding lawsuit brought by the Center for Biological Diversity, the American Bird Conservancy, the Surfrider Foundation, Save RGV, Rio Grande Valley, and the Carrizo Nation of Texas. According to the most recent court filings on July 25th, a joint status report is due to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia by October 27th. Jared Margolis, the lead attorney for CBD, told Spaceflight Now in a statement on September 6th that the administrative record is set to be filed by the end of the month. After the contents of the record are agreed upon, Dates for filing summary judgment motions will then be established, likely taking place over the fall and winter. Margolis added that they're looking at other options. If the FAA allows SpaceX to continue with additional launches before they've complied with the requirements of the National Environmental Policy Act, including a supplemental analysis to address the April 20th launch explosion and the subsequent changes to the launch program. As far as the recent tests and potential for another launch, we believe that such activities violate National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act, both of which require supplemental analysis as described above, and preclude such activities while the supplemental analysis is pending to preserve the status quo, Margolis said. We therefore remain very concerned that FAA has not made clear that no further launches will be permitted until all applicable environmental laws are complied with. To sum things up, the FAA has not yet provided satisfactory explanations for the issue. Therefore, SpaceX's Starship might take some more time before proceeding with the orbital launch. That's all for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it and did learn something new. Please do let us know what you think in the comments down below, because your feedback is very important to us and ultimately helps us make better videos for you to watch. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.